Greetings, gentlemen. Pleasure to meet you.
Hey,
Honored to have you on.
Thanks.
Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, honored to be here. Appreciate it.
You guys just had a show recently, the Block Party. How did that go?
Honestly, it was like the first time we've gotten to play live in about a year and a half, but it went, well for what it was, and kind of looking at it as a bit of a dress rehearsal for future club dates.
It was really good to be together as a group and trying to get through the songs and making noise together. And
I feel like there was once a time where rock music was the forefront. Everybody went to concerts,
The master genre amongst them all,
Warped Tour, all these tours, all these festivals were just for the rock bands. And then over the last couple of years, it went to hip hop, EDM, all
R&B,
this stuff.
Everything else, fusion of all these genres. Yeah.
So how do you guys stay afloat? How do you guys stay motivated? How do you guys find those gigs?
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, we actually just got dealt another bit of bad news. The Middle East, which is pretty much a premier club here in the Boston area. It's actually over the river in Cambridge, but they're getting closed down. Realistically, this one club has like 4 active rooms, at least maybe 5 that have music going on it. So that's a significant blow to gigging musicians, and it's one of the places where, dare I say it, a rock band like us could find ourselves playing.
I would like to say that bands that are established and have a permanent lineup and are seeking gigs, I think a lot of them form alliances with one another. And so if there is an event or a club date that people can link up, and if you can get a couple of bands on a bill, or have an event that will allow 2 or 3 bands to show up, I think that's a good way to get things rolling. I think to me a lot of it's I don't want to sound too corny, but it's like building a little network or a little community. If you can, the more people you can interact with, I think that perhaps you have a better chance of being part of something, a festival or a party or a club date or something.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Etherdome. Tell us about the process of creating it. How long did it take you, the studio process, stuff like that?
Well, I'll give you just a snapshot. So Dog says, well, I got some songs I want to work on, or I want to record. And I said, hey, come over, let's see what we can do. And so he brings these songs over. He says, okay, here's the first song. It goes like this. Na, 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 na. And I need a drum beat, and I got a bass part, and I got some lyrics. And I said, okay. So we broke out the Pro Tools, and we laid down a guide. Right. And then he threw down a vocal. So there we had something that guided us. And then, then I guess the next thing we do is throw down a drum part. And then he goes and puts a bass part on there, and then he said, okay, we need a lead guitar. So 20 takes later, let's keep that one, that sounds good. And then that's basically how we did the songs. The thing about what I insist upon doing is that I want a top-down performance. In other words, once the song begins, you're playing through the entire song. I'm not doing any punch-ins. I'm not editing my part.
Just want it to flow.
I just and plus, I like to listen to all kinds of different music, but in jazz in particular. And I think a lot of those old jazz recordings in the 50s, 60s, in the 60s, 50s and 60s, I think they would do like multiple takes of the same tune, and they were all together in the same room, and then they would choose like the best track. So those performances were like, okay, let's start in the tune, we go all the way through the tune, and we record it, and there's no punch-ins or overdubs and stuff like that. And so I kind of dig that kind of feel.
Question: you guys usually work in a way where you're building up the body of music and then you're naming stuff as you go, or you oftentimes already have a song theme, an idea of what a song might be called, or just let's say you have the title of what you want your album to be, such as Etherdome, and then you build it up?
It's definitely not any sort of like concept album, and I didn't sit there and think like, gee, these are the songs that need to be on the album. It's kind of, unfortunately, a situation in this case where they were like the 12 songs that we managed to get recorded before we ended up having to go into hibernation. You know, the title, honestly, the Ether Dome is a location. It's a place in Boston. It's the first place technically where ether was used for a operation. Actually, I wanted to take the cover photo of us in there because it's a kind of cool looking room, but you can go and take as many pictures as you want. You just can't publish them because it's
I see.
Oh, wow.
So then we had to go find another somewhat cool, relevant image, and like I didn't really know how I was going to come up with that, but we did, thanks to NASA. You know, NASA, they were like really cool. Not only did they not charge us any money, I remember just saying, "Do you want us to credit you guys or anything?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure, you could do that." And I was like, "Okay, that's pretty easy going." No, I mean, you know, you'd figure for NASA, right? But you know, the songs again were, you know, I would love to say that we had it like well mapped out, and even the one that we're working on now, it's not necessarily well mapped out.
I like that approach because I sometimes feel too much structure or using too much, like in the case of like the new softwares, using all that, or even over planning can like stifle the creativity.
The artistry of production has risen to such an incredible level that you can make this sonic you know, landscape, and you're right. I think sometimes I find it like, wow, I've heard this sound a lot because it's what's trendy and hip in the production world today. And our thing isn't like that.
No. You don't have to name all of them, but let us know some of the the bands or musicians or sounds that influence Ether Dome.
To me, it's always interesting when I hear people, you know, reference what the influences are. We've heard all sorts of stuff from people that have listened to the songs, and I'm thinking, I love those bands, but I don't hear any of that necessarily in the music. And it's people like, you know, Iggy and the Stooges and the MC5, and, you know, people talking about, you know, London punk bands from the 70s, and it's all great stuff. I'm really heavy into 60s music. You know, Bryn's talked already a lot about some of his, you know, I think his musical influences are far broader than mine. I grew up playing classical music, so in some way there's that in there too.
But the sound of the band, I think, reflects the artists who are in the group. Because I mean, the way I play drums, you know, is based upon, you know, how I've developed when I first started out as a kid, and you know, all the experience I've had in the learning and the growth as a drummer and also as a guitar player.
Pretty much traveling on the same vibe here, and it's nice because, you know, I would say we're sort of like, you know, with that thing of like 50% of what we're into, we're both into, and then that other 50%, we're both bringing in all this other stuff. Again, you know, I'm all about, you know, the things like the bagpipes and the sitar, and he's definitely got a better foot in jazz and probably more like world music stuff.
You guys were talking about the perfection you guys aim for during the creation of music. And it reminds me of Stanley Kubrick and all the stories with Stanley Kubrick, how he does 1,000 takes and all that stuff. And if you look at Stanley Kubrick films, he's one of the greatest filmmakers. You know, he's technical, he has all this energy and all that stuff. But I think part of it, what makes those films so great and what makes him so great is that he stormed through the hardest parts of making the films. And so my question for you guys is, what were the hardest parts of making Ether Dome, and how did you guys weather the storm?
The hardest part was getting a part that sounded cool.
It all sounds cool, man. Come on.
Yeah. And you know, as much as I know, because we led off with that statement about, you know, being perfectionists, and I'm sure a lot of people would laugh listening to the record because it is definitely not perfect in many, many ways, but there's a point where you just got to go, it's it's done.
This is what it was meant to be like.
Right. You could spend the rest of your life working on one song and it will still never be perfect.
You'll never be finished.
Right.
My attitude.
You got to understand when to, all right, that was that. What's next?
Right. And, I think I may have consciously made the idea of like, let's keep these songs simple because we don't need to be struggling with a whole lot of stuff simultaneously. Let's songs that we can really like get down quickly, execute fairly easily.
I just wonder if you guys want to share anything you're working on, if you want to talk more about the album that's coming up, anything that you want to talk about, use these last couple of minutes just to share it with us.
Sure. Well, again, we're hoping to have, as soon as possible to have, another album finished up. We're tentatively, again, using a title Trans-Global Amnesia, which was just something
that sounds amazing. You guys with the album titles, you keep making us feel like we're in a sci-fi, just like I don't know what. Because Ether Dome already, we're like Ether Dome. Yeah, now this, come on, we already know it's over. You got it.